I liked your hat last night as well.
Oh,
Good hat. Do you find it's a musical hat?
The hats have just assumed this kind of strange mythical status in my life that I named my first album Hat, and I got the first hat that I thought of as kind of a talismanic object after a Zappa concert when I was still lingering on the stage, and somebody wearing this purple-green felt contraption came to the front of the stage and said, "I really enjoyed your performance tonight," and I said, "I really enjoy your hat."
I think hats are important in musical thing. I mean, you're a hat man as well.
I do enjoy a hat now and again.
But I mean, it changes. If you feel like it changes your personality a bit, and able to adopt a slightly different personality. Django had a hat he used to put on that he called his composer's hat. So he would put it on sort of in order to adopt the proper demeanour to put him in the mood for writing. So I thought perhaps there was. You know, you had one of those hats.
I mean, I felt like it was a magical thing when after I complimented the guy on his hat, he threw it up to me, and I just thought, what a glorious gesture, and I put it on my head, and I walked backstage, and Andy Partridge and Dave Gregory were standing there.
Leaping for the hat?
Well, no, they didn't immediately leap for the hat. But I just thought, wow, because that in itself was sort of a magical occurrence, and I came to associate that with the hat. But it's also as I got into Steve Vai's band and stuff, I used to wear these absurdly weird, huge, elaborate hats, and it became kind of a part of the character that I played on stage.
Yeah, hats and costume have a part in music production, don't they?
Mm-hmm. And then I thought I needed to react against that, and I stopped wearing the hats, and of course everybody said, "Where are the hats?" So I'm gradually bringing a hat this blue hat that I got, which actually has a little Carlos Santana logo on the side. It's a Carlos Santana.
It's a cool hat. Yeah. Of course, with the hat you can say, the Bob Dylan cover, National Sky. You just do that. And you've said so much without opening your mouth.
That's true. So. And generally, I'll wear that hat, the hat I was wearing last night. I'll start a performance with it, and then almost immediately take it off. And I feel like that in itself has a certain
to let the ideas out.
But then also at the end of the show to put it back on to sort of signal, okay, we're done.
No more ideas tonight.
That's right. No,
keep them in till tomorrow.
I might need these later.
All right, so speaking of last night, Mike thankfully played a concert for all of us, and I was curious.
Very enjoyed the show.
Thank you.
So
thank you very much.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Malcolm and Kerry and Gary, I don't know how much exposure you had previously had to Mike's music. I know you two have met at Prague Day before.
Yeah, we've met a couple of times. I've seen him. I don't know if it was the debut of you playing Wing Beat Fantastic at Nearfest at one
Nearfest,
time.
yeah.
With the drummer from Humphreys McGee, whose name I can't recall.
Chris,
right.
Myers.
Who's lovely, yeah.
Yeah.
Was that... Anyway, that was a lovely album, real musical, your collaboration with Andy Partridge. Smashing stuff.
Thank you.
But I love what you did last night. Your versatility, playing across both instruments, the keyboards and that. And how it didn't faze you at all when your guitar went up the spout and you grabbed a matchstick with wire on it and still played really well. It didn't seem to faze you. I mean, how do you do that? How do you put yourself in a space that is like, okay, you're just focused on the music and you can't let this physical thing get in the way of that?
Well, that's certainly that. It's just an awareness no one's best interests are served by becoming overwhelmed by the...
Of course not. But I mean, if you can't actually play the thing...
Well, that's there's always that. It's like...
Thank God it was playable.
But it's true. But I picked it up with all the goodwill in the world that I know this is going to work.
Right.
It's like,
that's what carries you through.
Well, it's true. I mean, I do believe that there's in the middle of a performance environment, there seems to be a greater capacity for magic to occur.
You're ready for magic to happen.
I welcome it, and I almost it might be presumptuous, but I almost assume it So when I pick up that guitar, thinking clearly this is going to work.
You have to expect it.
Yeah.
Positive attitude.
Yeah.
Very good.
It's and also I feel and I'm in a real way I've got everybody's everyone's attention is focused and they're all hoping to have a good time and
there's all the will in the world in the room to make you have that happen.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to do is be up there visibly upset or struggling over something because that deflates all the magic of a performance right away.
Well, it was wonderful. Lovely to see that.
Thank you. It meant the world to me to be able to play music for you gentlemen. It was a bit overwhelming.
See, I find that hard to believe. 'Cause I finished, really, my writing career is way back. I've been all kinds of things since. And I've been a teacher, most latterly. And for me, what you were doing was taking me harmonically to places that I don't naturally go to. So it was a delight for my head and my brain to be witnessing something that it doesn't normally witness. And I think that's why I actually bought one of your CDs, which I asked my missus, that's a big deal.
Okay, well, I mean,
And he doesn't buy CDs.
I don't buy anything.
Well, to me, it was a huge deal. The fact that you refused. I would have been happy, abjectly happy to just give you that album, and the fact that you insisted.
No, I did insist.
But that too,
and I can't see why you would think it was great to be playing in front of you because it's been so long.
Well, I mean,
you're
trust
still
me.
active.
Yeah, I mean, you're an active, happening
still
player,
happening.
Yeah, but I mean, I think, I mean, anybody who's watching this doesn't need me to instruct them, and I trust you don't either, as to what's so wonderful and constantly giving about the music that you all created. And as a guitar player, certainly I was incredibly inspired by the way you found a way to just bring so much gut into this stuff. That was just incredible. And then, but then also, the parts can be, it doesn't come off academic at all. It's just so much fun. But the underpinning of the stuff that you wrote as a keyboardist, because that keyboard was my first instrument, and I responded to so viscerally to the interplay between the hands and the way that what you created on a keyboard was then expanded upon to become full arrangements.
Yeah.
And just the architecture of it and the delight of the way your harmonic sense is just endlessly fascinating and delightful to me. So and it gave me so much as I was growing up listening to that music.
I think what I love so much about giant music still is the interplay between the instruments. It's not, I don't know, we're not supposed to talk about giant music, are we, particularly? Oh, is that cool? All right.
Are we allowed? Good. Because I could go on.
But the interplay between the instruments, it's not focused on a particular player's virtuoso skill. It truly is like a group ensemble effort. And I think, we'd all agree that we're all happiest in that environment. None of us are like spotlight people to go out front and try and do something, because I'm sure we all think none of us are good enough to do that. And it's strength in numbers
but
thing for us.
Collectively, it's this one colossal virtuoso statement.
But that is for me the beauty of music, of the interplay between players all the time. It's the conversation happening between people on stage, whether it's written formalised music or improvised stuff. There's still the need for the ears always to be listening to the other people, to the interplay for that. That's always what I respond to, and that's what makes me happy and makes me exuberant all the time.
Well, what's great fun about listening to the live recordings is how the joy of the performance and of the interaction takes hold, and you can hear the two of you just throwing these things back and forth and say, what about this? It's like, I'm going to come in a little bit earlier this time. How do you respond to that? And it's just so fun.
But you do that with your bands too, that I've seen twice now. It's real evident. There's so much joy you playing the stuff. And of course, you got to have that. I mean, I did an interview earlier today. It's like we talk about the music, and it's like there's first things first. You got to enjoy what you do. If you don't love it, you're not going to produce anything, and
especially with all
it's not going to happen.
Especially with all you need to undergo in order to just make it to a performance. The travel, the
technical things,
the hotel. Did you sleep well? Did you eat well? And then what's the sound like on stage? Is the sound guy somebody that you can relate to on a human level? All these things play into it.
Right.
So when you finally get to when you finally get to the miracle of the show is about to start. Finally, we're what we're here for, and you better find a way to enjoy it because of everything that you've done to get to that point.
I remember in the past, we'd had, I don't know, for us, it seems to me that the number of great gigs that we've had in all our career is like you can count them on both hands, perhaps. Great gigs, So in an attempt to reproduce those great gigs, I remember consciously trying to think, okay, what did we do the day before? What happened, Well, there's one particular gig we had in Miami, and we ate at a restaurant, and we'd all got food poisoning. And Derek was off to the side of the stage every 3 minutes to heave in a bucket. But we played great. It was a super show. Those things, I don't know what it is, but...
it pulls that little bit of extra out of you. It's like I refuse to be
It's a
cowed
little
by
bit
these.
extra.
Yes, indeed. I was speaking of the metaphorical bucket.
Of course, I knew that.
So can you guys talk a little about the importance of improvisation as it relates to your compositional approaches? Because I know you do very complex music that is highly orchestrated.
Yeah.
And then there's the blend where there's usually a section for improvisation. Where does that come from, and how does that feed into your process? Like, is that something that happens as a band when you're composing, or is that something that happens?
Well, I've asked Kerry about this sometimes before, and I've asked him, and you can perhaps answer it a bit more here in this forum. But I always wonder, how do you start the process of writing a tune? Does it sit with you sitting down and improvising something? You can answer that if you like.
Well,
I mean, it does for me, and not that I've written tons
I've got to
of
try
stuff.
and remember because it was a long time ago for me.
Yeah.
But as I recall, it is just that. Yeah, it is just you're trying to find something that you feel has energy, has emotion, has a statement that you want to go back to. That's always helpful. And you're not dreading working on it again tomorrow. And you go back to it, and then you. I don't have anything in mind really at that point. I don't know if you're the same, but you have to take an idea so far before you begin to realise how it could be used and what sections could be involved. But because I've had a writer's block for so long, that's why I find answering these questions a little bit difficult.
Yeah,
because
I get that.
I can't remember what I did. Otherwise, I'd be doing it now.
Yeah.
But do you sit down and wait for things to happen?
I keep going.
Yeah.
I try to. So I have different approaches, like discipline. I will start at 10 o'clock and I will finish. And then other days I think, no, I'll wait till I feel like it. So 6 days later, I have a go. But there doesn't seem to be any particular rules. But in the days of Giant, there was obviously a deadline.
Yeah, there's pressure.
That's which is the fact
do
that
an
you have a
album.
unit to compose for and a deadline to meet. It's it's pressure, but it's also inspiration.
It is.
Yeah.
And it forces you to work till 3 in the morning if you have to.
Yeah.
And
So when you write now, or when you set aside time to compose, I mean, do things come to you that you think, well, that's good, I'll work on that further, or does that?
I often get excited for a few minutes.
And it just, and then you come back to it the next day, and the
That
excitement.
can happen. Yeah, it can happen. Yeah, I just think, because what I want to do, I like to be inspired. So I think I'm not inspired now, so I'll stop, which is probably a mistake. If I had a deadline, I wouldn't stop.
Right.
But I think I'm getting a bit tired, and something's on the telly or something, and so I might stop and think, I'll pick it. I'll be really impressed by this tomorrow, and I'll know exactly what to do because I'll be coming at it fresh. And then I come at it, and I think that's not very good because all the vision that was in my mind, I could hear the potential of it, is something that was at that point just an
Artificial.
abstract, just an abstract imaginative thing. So it really, I've still got a lot to learn.
Yeah, I definitely,
Do you feel pressure from deadlines to do stuff, or you just
no,
yourself
that's,
propelling?
I can take an inordinately long time to finish stuff. Like the most recent album, Scambot 2, was, it was years in the works, and I was, lucky to be in a situation where I was working at my friend's home, who was also the guy in charge of the label, and he was just saying, take the time you need to get this done correctly. And it's I just learned at a certain point to not be too judgmental about ideas that I was having. I put down an idea, and there were several times during the course of that album, more than any other that I've done, where I would be listening to rough mixes, driving home and thinking, oh, that's entirely valueless. There's is nothing there. But I was listening to like a single keyboard part without even a bass line or any kind of a vocal thing on top. Just like I wasn't trusting, whatever the spark that made me think as I was putting my hands down on the keyboard this is a good thing to do, because this is a worthwhile human pursuit. It's like, why? If I felt that at the moment that I had that inspiration, why should I doubt it the next day? Because anybody who hears that song will also be hearing it for the first time. When they hear it, and hopefully they will
Could
catch
you not
that.
be too close to it to make a good objective judgment of what was good, though? It's interesting what you just said there, Kerry, because I wasn't in Giant for very long, but I can remember you rattling away on the piano with the themes and the tunes of Three Friends, that main Three Friends tune. So that I could see that, and there was an album had to be made. We were going to go and tour it, and so the deadline. But I talked with John Webbers down in Welsh Wales sometime later, and you made so much music, and I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was hugely complimentary to all your talents, Kerry, and he said something to the effect of, it was all good, and Kerry just wanted it to be even better, so it had to be sort of taken away from him and kind of played, otherwise you would have kept, making it better and better and better, maybe not produced as much, and make the group environment and the agenda is perhaps a positive thing for finishing work. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes,
I don't
unquestionably.
think much, but groups are good for that thing, and also what Gary was saying with the interplay. There's a chemistry of people working together. It was great for Giant because it was album time for bands.
Well,
And
yeah,
the
there
whole
was
thing
if there was more than a year between releases, people would start to think, what's the matter? Have they broken up? I was just thinking about how I remember the break. A lot of people at the time remembered the time between Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here as though it was this endless expanse of time. It's like, oh, what's happened? Is Pink Floyd done now? And it was like 2 years or something, which now it's routine for there to be 3 or 4 years
it's about
between.
the Harry Potter books, isn't it? They wait for the next release of Harry Potter books, where it used to be kind of more bands.
But then, it's a very different era now, recording. Obviously the whole industry is totally different, than the technology is completely different. Back then, we had the pressure of a deadline and no means to record professionally at home. So anything you were going to do was committed. Had to be in a studio. So it was studio time. You were in that environment of time is money. You know, there's not that now, is there? So it's a kind of it's hard to talk about that.
Well, I sort of miss that aspect. You know, I'm sort of willfully taking a break from making solo albums right now. I'm doing various collaborative projects. I'm sort of more interested in collaboration and performance than I am with creating an album by myself from scratch.
Yeah.
But the last many albums that I've done were done in that home environment where you just put down the seed of an idea and then just over time
it's more self-discipline than to complete something, isn't it? I mean, there's
well, yeah, and that's what I would like to do next time out. I'd love to write and rehearse an album and then go into the studio. And
I was going to say, so how much of the material is finished before you take it into the studio, realizing at the same time there is no studio that you sort of take it into. You don't get it all complete, take it. Which is what we did. We had it all ready to go, and just going into the studio was the sort of almost mechanical act of recording it, putting it onto tape. Yeah. That's not the case. It's much more organic now, this process. It's do it as you're going. And
it is, but I think some of that, that actual, it's two things. It's the interaction of human beings playing in a studio space.
Yeah,
absolutely. And it's the discipline of having practiced the stuff so well beforehand, so that it may seem rote by the time you get in the studio, but it also means that you know how these songs go. You've already explored the intricacies, and you're ready to do a good performance. Yeah. I mean, I listen to. I'd be remiss not to mention how much I love the drumming on Three Friends. I think it's incredible work.
Absolutely.
There are several drum fills on the prologue that are amongst the best drum fills that have ever been committed to tape.
I've described a couple of them as of those impossible drum fills he played.
It just used to explode every now and then, hopefully in the right place, but it just explode.
I get excited for a few minutes as well.
But it just sounds so. It's so creative, but it's controlled as well. That album has a very that's a unique feeling record in the catalog. I think.
Kerry and Ray's tunes, great tunes and real concept album. Phil's writing is. Yeah. He came up with a good narrative.
School Days is just unbelievable. Yeah. That's just an unbelievable song.
I thought some of your pieces were almost like contemporary.
Yeah, absolutely. Got that feeling last night.
Serious music in the sense that they were like picture music that just took you on. There didn't seem to be. There's absolutely no copy and paste about what you do, is there really?
I think maybe I do get. I get restless with myself at the idea of having a thing that just happens the same way several times over the course of the song.
Yeah. There's not a repetition. There's not an AAB structure.
Well, it's because I'm trying to keep myself interested.
I get it.
I'm very, very much trying to keep myself interested and presume that if it's interesting to me, then it'll be interesting to other people. What I tend to forget, and but overlook, is that a lot of listeners require that repetition in order to latch on to a piece of music in a way that means anything to them.
That's true.
Yeah. Which is fine.
Yeah. Yeah, one shouldn't underestimate the audience. They are capable of, actualizing real things there, perceiving complex structures. A lot of our fans are that way. Give us a hard time.
Well, I mean, the people who are into what I've done and the people who are into what you do are hungry for that.
Sophisticated listeners, yeah.
And at this point, they've heard your music so many times, you wouldn't think that you could still be surprised by it. But what I enjoy now is because I still listen to your music and it still sounds contemporary. It still sounds completely vital, and it's instructive to listen to music that I was in love with 40 years ago and find that I'm still in love with it for all the reasons that I would loved it then and that I actually had good judgment. This stuff really is valid.
Me too. I had the same kind of thoughts about it. But back to the process of the creating process. How does an idea spark in your brain do you sort of physically try to get yourself to a mental state where sort of not much is going on so you can just be receptive and responsive to something? I know for me, and I don't write hardly anything, but I find I have to get in a spot. Of course, it's always better to be at a guitar if you're going to try and write something, probably, in front of it. But to just have my brain go quiet, my brain sort of thoughts of, that wheel didn't arrive, the roof needs fixing, those thoughts have got to go away to just get to a place where stuff starts to happen and get rid of the cliches, because I always play the same thing when I sit down, and it's like I don't want to be there. I want to be in a news place.
Right. Yeah, it's that the challenge is to not necessarily accept where your hands automatically, muscularly want to go, because your hands will they tend to fall into patterns, and what I always try to do is just write things that I want to hear, and what I want to hear is something I've never heard before, and when you have established patterns, that can be, it's a struggle, but it's fun, to just push yourself that much more. And so when I pick up a guitar with the thought I'm going to create something, I just try to willfully make my fingers go in positions and things where I've never seen them go before. And
it's Star Trek.
Yeah,
when no fingers have been
that's
before.
Right, they've never gone before. And by virtue of physics, some kind of music is going to come out as a result that I've never heard myself do before. And then if it has any kind of validity, then I will just sort of like continue traveling down that path with either variations on that theme or the thing of just, I'll compose something and then sit back and just imagine myself as a listener rather than a composer and say, what do I want to hear next? And that's the next part of the song.
That's interesting.
I had something there.
Keeping life interesting, you're stimulated as a composer. You must be stimulated by variation in life. I know some composers would go away to get out of their normal life. I think you had a trip 3 months in LA, which was out of your comfort zone to come up with something. Maybe that's not the greatest thing, because your life's, everything that you do is business. I don't know.
Sorry, I was going to say, for me sometimes that's like I can reach that space I was talking about. For me, it's just like sort of mindlessness almost. And I can play something, and then sometimes I find something that seems to me original and mine and my identity, and I have my little bit of inspiration. I have the idea, the initial spark, the seed of the thing, and it's like, okay, great, I got that. And that's as far as it goes. And then, the inspirational bit is, I don't want to say easy because it's hard won, but it comes relatively easily once I'm in the space. After that, there's work, and it's like I'm resistant
to work.
But do you still think that that original idea is valid? Or
I do.
Yeah,
I do. And I play them endlessly to death, hoping that I'd hear something else on the end of it, that it will, more metamorphose. What's the word? Into something spectacular, But what happens is it just keeps repeating, and it's like, and then it's set in stone in memory, and it's like it could never change.
Well, have you joined any of those bits to any of this?
We've got it covered between us.
You need to pool those bits and see what's going to happen.
But I do get a point that goes, back to Kerry's three-friend composition, the way that was worked, melody on the bass and then expanded to the big theme at the end. They were skillful arranging developmental techniques.
Compositional tricks.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but tricks that work,
they
produce good music. Tricks, people just think it's a cheap shot.
No, it's right. No, it's nice.
No, it's a technique, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely, that is. But that's once you've already got the ideas.
You do need the tune to start with.
Yeah, got to have the foundation.
He's got the tune. It just keeps repeating it.
I've got a great foundation. I've got no roof.
Oh.
Is the trouble? Or windows. Front door would be nice.
Can we
Bit
book
of
a studio?
landscaping.
Can we book a studio right now? I think we need to work on some music.
So, Mike, do you run into that where you've got an idea and it's just an earworm, and you said you challenge yourself to send your fingers where they've never gone before, right? Mm-hmm. How do you escape the earworm and turn it into a full-fledged idea? Because that's the root of the conversations I've had this week with both Gary and Kerry.
It's not a new thing, is it? It's
No,
just,
it's
this is
not.
where everybody stumbles.
Right, but everyone has techniques, right?
Yeah.
Well, I just always assume that an earworm is and I never use that phrase, but just
I don't either.
but a piece of music that it just sometimes it'll be something that just arrives when I'm away from the instrument, and I'll sing it into the phone, and so I've got many of these little snippets and.
Do you join them? Or?
Well, I have. There have been times where, over the last several records, where I just call up the voice memos, and I'm at a part of a song where I need something to happen, and I'll almost randomly choose one, and see if it fits, and almost anything can be made to fit.
Yeah, that's right.
It's trusting in the process, because I've done it so many times now that I can take a seed of an idea and bring it to some completion that will be worthwhile. Yeah. And it's relaxing, and it's giving myself a break, and it's also realizing that ultimately, what does it really mean? It's not that that it's all an illusion, but it is also that these it's kind of a bit of fun, but it's also something that can have so much emotional value after the fact. It's a combination of saying, well, ultimately this isn't just too significant, it's just a piece of music that I'm working on, but also the realization that once I get it completed and somebody else gets to hear it, there is a possibility that that somebody's going to be really moved by it.
Well, there is that thing too about a thing that's yours becomes so precious. That's with me, that it cannot be changed. It's immutably this. And for anybody to suggest that this should then do that, it's like, oh no. That mustn't happen, but you can't be too precious, and you've got to trust in the fact that, okay, well, I had that idea, so you've got to trust that there will be more ideas. There's, they're in a pipeline right behind you. Just got to open that valve, and hopefully they sort of come out.
I've encountered a lot of musicians that have this issue, and as a producer, I've worked with quite a few who managed to get their ideas to a certain point, and then it just wouldn't go any further after that. And it's really I love producing, and it's one of my greatest joys to work with someone, prior to going into the studio, to work with them on their ideas. And then they'll say, I've got this idea, and I think it's great, but I just have no idea what to do with it. And I'll hear it, and having that distance, it just I'll listen, I go, instantly, I'll say, well, what if it just does this? And I'll go, oh yeah, and then I'll play that for them, and they'll say, and then that'll give them the next idea. Yeah. The little thing that I've done that will then inspire the next part of the song for them, and then it's just a little game of volleyball.
In fact, is the function of a producer, isn't it?
Yeah.
To be able to stand outside of the band, to look at it objectively, and be able to say, no, not there, go there, do this.
Yeah. So basically, what I'm doing is offering my services.
Fab. Yeah. Well, that can happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think when I did the stuff with Andy Partridge, he himself felt that he was in the midst of a bit of a writer's block. Yeah. And even though he'd been doing some collaborating, and also I think he was feeling a bit embittered and beaten down by the state of the industry, because I think he was definitely at that point of why. Look at what's happening. Look what's happened with record sales, and I don't think he ever felt at that point that XTC was necessarily getting the kind of recognition that they should have. Yeah. So it was a bit of why continue, And I'm over here as a fan and a friend going, well, because you're a brilliant songwriter and the world is better when you write songs. and I would love to help, you know. So that's where that all started. It wasn't even with the idea that I would eventually make an album. I didn't know I was making a Mike Keneally album. I just thought I was writing songs with Andy Partridge. And I had gone to his home for 1 week in 2006 and then another week in 2008. And we had, you know, the seeds or more for 8 or 9 songs. And I thought we were going to do 1 more week to finish things up. And then I saw an interview where somebody said, well, what's happening with your project with Mike Keneally? And he was going, I have no idea. You'll have to ask him. It's taking forever. I thought the album would be done by now. I didn't realize that I was supposed to make an album.
That's the work bit Gary was talking about, the work bit.
Yeah, and actually at that point I kind of felt the looming of a sort of deadline, even though it wasn't a specific deadline, but it was just all of a sudden it was a form of pressure of the sort that you experienced making Gentle Giant albums, and which helped make those albums so great, I think. And so I wrote Andy and I said, okay, I understand now. I guess we're done with the writing process. I'll take it from here. So I made that album, you know, because at the time I was thinking, will Andy be more involved in the actual making of the record? And we had discussed even the possibility of him producing me making the album. But at that point I said, okay, Andy just wants to move past this. So I said, I'll make the album here in California. I'll send you rough mixes. And so I was sending him rough mixes, and he was writing his responses in these lengthy, detailed emails. So in a way, he was very much a part of the making of the record, just by saying, oh, you need to do at least 1 more vocal take there, and this, I love where you're going on this section, but maybe try this, and so he was sort of a transatlantic associate producer on that record.
Cool. Well, the results are fab of that album.
No,
really good.
Yeah, and again, it's because of the nature of the collaboration and the fact that I then had this sort of pressure, which was Andy, the specter of Andy looming. When is this going to be done?
Pressure.
It gave that album a different quality to all my others, I think.
And your fans and his fans as well.
Well, yeah, there was expectation there. What's it going to sound like when these two guys get together?
Absolutely, there was.
In a way, that happens with Gentle Giant, hence Gorg, that brought those fans are just so loyal. You know, they bring us here. You know, to sort of.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
I'm a little bit stunned that I have never been here before, but it's a beautiful spirit. It's incredible.
I mean, my part in that, in the organisation of 3 friends, just playing the Gentle Giant back catalogue. I know it's brought a lot of pleasure to them to see it performed live again, you know. But for sure, the question I was always asked, and Gary said, when's the new music going to happen, you know? And that's what they would like. In fact, one of the Gorgers, who's kind of like a real linchpin of it, we agreed we both have tattoos, you know. If the band lasted for sort of 7, 8 years or something like that, which it did, you know, and then we thought, well, we'll change it to when there's an hour's worth of original music. So if it does that, that's Greg.
Yeah, well, right.
Yeah, so it's a lot of good feeling, you know, and people that will buy albums in a world where you can get all your music for nothing. But as Kerry's just done with your album, that's a fantastic thing to be cherished. It might be not as many of them as there was before, but it's a great thing to nurture. Yeah.
Well, you have a different relationship with an album that you've bought. You know, I think it does mean more to you.
Yeah,
and
you have an expectation.
Yeah.
You've invested.
Yeah, and back in the day, you didn't just invest money. You invested the gasoline it took to drive to the record store, the time you took to stand there and look at other records and decide which one you were going to buy.
Yeah.
It was a whole
really
much
personal,
more invested experience. And as a result, I think that you know, again, you're in danger of just sounding like a get off my lawn kind of guy. I'm not a young person, so it's quite possible that young people do have an incredibly emotional connection to music that I just don't. that I don't understand because I don't live that experience. But it seems to me that we had a deep connection of a different kind to music in those days. But I'm going to abandon this.
No, I think that's true, but that's as far as you can take that. Right, without sounding get off my lawn.
Yeah.
The
Wizened
giant
old
stuff I know
chaps.
appeals to young people. I mean, my son's friends liked these compositions. These compositions.
And they're
like
musicians,
Giant records.
aren't they?
You know, he's a musician now, plays in the band. I'm not mentioning I don't want to advertise or anything, but that rekindled my interest in Gentle Giant. And then this Gould thing came along, and then and it was slightly embarrassing, the fashions back in the day with the silk pants and all that sort of stuff, but the music just didn't get old, because of the quality.
I think that there's
the craft in it.
There's the logic and architecture of that music. I can see
Stands
being very
test of-
appealing to like a gamer.
Yeah.
You know,
Well-
someone who spends a lot of time perfecting, motions in order to execute, some incredibly detailed and difficult movement in a game. There's something
right.
there's something gamish about the way Gentle Giant music fits together, and I can, and then. Are you aware? You know who Flying Lotus is?
I don't know.
Look up Flying Lotus because he's one of the most incredibly creative people making music nowadays. He's gotten into film direction, and the movie that he came out with this year is apparently one of the most insanely disgusting films that has ever been made. So maybe you don't want to start your Flying Lotus experience there. But,
Sounds great,
But
Mike.
if you he did an album called Cosmogramma, and an album several years ago called You're Dead, which is just synthesizes all these elements of modern culture and jazz and just like mind-blowing studio techniques to create this incredible stuff. It's really amazing music, and when I met him, we instantly bonded over Gentle Giant, and it wasn't necessarily what I would have expected to hear from this guy, but this is he was involved with Kendrick Lamar on this album To Pimp a Butterfly, which was one of the most influential albums of the last several years, and Flying Lotus is a big part of this scene that's creating this music. And he's a huge Gentle Giant fan, and I don't think that's an accident. There is something in this music that absolutely remains relevant. You should definitely hear some Flying Lotus.
Well, it certainly appeals to a certain type of person, or not a certain type,
Need
but
a young producer who's got his finger on the pulse like this gent.
yes. I was going to say some of the people who attend our Gourds, it's like their backgrounds are people you might be describing. We have a mathematics professor, a guy who pioneers virtual reality in treatment of veterans with PTSD. So, I mean, they're people who are like into details.
Yeah.
So, it dovetails right in with gamers, and absolutely. And they can also be a bit pedantic, some of these people.
No.
No, that's right.
Unimaginable.
I take that back. That's true. I have a friend who's not been very well with her eye surgery, and in typical pedantic fashion, he's worked out how his recovery period, and he says he's 57% the way through it.
I do that when
Hey, Jerry.
when I'm making albums, I'll do that. Sometimes I'll post online this. I believe I'm 87.3% done with the new record.
But that's tongue in cheek, no?
Well,
Please tell me it's tongue in cheek.
Well, there's a part of me that believes it to be true.
Well, that's good. That's positive. You're nearly done then.
I think. Well, I mean, I think you have to stand behind these statements and simultaneously see the absurdity in them, and that's kind of the way I approach all aspects of life.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
I'm good.
You
That
good?
was awesome. I loved it. Yeah. 45 minutes or so.
Really?
Yeah.
It goes by in a flash.
Yeah. But I think we have some action items here where we need to get Mike doing some production work for you guys. So expect something later this year.
Is there a question I could ask Kerry? Is it, or just Ollie? There's this lick on the first Gentle Giant album that permeates every song at the beginning and end.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just is there a story behind that, or
That's from
that-
Giant.
It's from the very first song.
It's those notes rearranged to
Yeah.
go
Just as a kind of index link.
continuity. Yes, you're still listening to the same album.
Yeah.
kind of thing. Yes, you're not that stoned. Not yet.
You were. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was done on one of those giant Moogs, wasn't it? Wow.
That's right.
All that.
But that's a composerly thing in
Yeah.
the same way the bass line from the beginning of Mr. Classic Quality gets
Right, the
totally,
theme.
this epic thing, treatment at the end, which, I had that album for 4 years. Well, actually, I don't know if the film is still running. I think I told you that I spent a summer when I was 16 years
That's
old
the thing.
learning every guitar
Right,
part
yeah,
from
absolutely.
every record,
Yeah.
which at that point was up to Giant for a Day. So everything from the first album up to Giant for a Day, I learned every guitar part. And it
Well, then
was,
I've got some questions for you.
and that was a part of my, huge part of my musical grounding. And I think it was during that process that I realized that the theme of Three Friends was the bass line for the first part. That made me giddy. That made me happy for a week when I figured that out.
And that the guitar part is the vocal line.
What's that?
And that the guitar part is the vocal line at the end. Da, 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 da.
Well, now I'll be happy for the next
Three
one.
friends.
That's so good.
There's got to be another one in there somewhere. But yeah, they crop up all over the place, don't they? And I was always amazed at the occurrence of the vocal repetition of a word so sincere. That happens in a few tunes. I don't know
because
why. I don't know if it
Sincere
just
shows up in
happens.
Aspirations again.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
right.
Well, I knew that was it. Well, and the other thing I realized when I was overwhelmed last night at performing Aspirations for you gentlemen.
Thank you so much for doing that.
Yeah,
of course.
by the way.
It didn't half sound simplistic though after your stuff.
No, well,
it
to me, I think it just sounded essential. It was like when I played that, I said, "Oh, there's music. There's just something that is like confidently perfect, without having to like jump all over the place every 3 bars." But then also singing those lyrics, it's like the song has never been sadder. Just the idea of people begging for leadership.
Yeah.
God, yeah.
Ouch.
Quite.
I don't know. Make us strong. Please.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's enough on that topic.
Yeah. We've been calling that our blue room discussions as opposed to the red room discussions in there.
Yeah, right. Uh-huh. Anyway, that was a bonus track of discussion. I don't know if the
Yeah, the encore interview.
Okay.
That's right, yeah.
That was the hidden track.
Cool.